Hello bunnies and welcome back also Woodland Bunny, a cozy space to talk about books. Now this is the first video I am filming in 2025, which is quite ironic because I'm talking about the last month of 2024. But anyway, regardless, I'm hoping that you're having a very healthy and happy start to the new year. And as I just said, today is going to be my December wrap up. The best, the worst, the mediocre books. Let's discuss all. So here are the stats on the screen as per usual. I feel like I had quite a good reading month in December. I just kind of took wherever my mood was taking me, and I just loved most of the books that I read, which was exciting. And if I wasn't, then I kind of was quite quick to wrap it up and finish it to then move on to a book that I knew I was going to find enjoyment in. So let's get into the detail of the books that I read and my themes and feelings and thoughts surrounding them. Starting off as always with my worst to best, we have the mediocre section, and the first book in this is The Nightmare Before Christmas. The themes I had down for this were a new concept, different holidays and the stereotypes they bring, a male romance between the Christmas prince and the Halloween prince. There was a subplot of politics running through of the structure of different holidays, specifically Christmas, and there was like notes on consumerism and running holidays like a business, in which was quite interesting. So those were the themes kind of encapsulated in this book, but I found it quite an interesting read, like I said, a new concept, because I hadn't ever really read anything before of holidays being these kind of business mechanisms and then them having kind of royalty that run these businesses. And it was very interesting and unique, and I was left wanting a bit more from the romance, because this was a romance. It got very heavy into the natures of the holidays, in which kind of dragged away from the story a bit more. And there was these kind of marriages of conveniences that were proposed, and these alliances in the different holidays, in which you kind of knew which the direction of the story was going in, but it just never took off until quite delayed into the book. So yeah, I feel as though it kind of just moved a bit too slow for my liking, and that's why it sat in my mediocre tier. But like I say, I think the concept and the characters and the whole politics surrounding the holidays and the notes on consumerism, etc., are all really new and great concepts, and that's why I definitely recommend it if those themes sound interesting to you. I will say it was very heavy on the Christmas theme, so perhaps it might be best to read it in that Halloween and the Christmas period limbo time, so perhaps one to pick up later this year. Then the final book in the mediocre section is When the Moon Hatched, and which was the Bunny's Book Club pick for November, I want to say. I kind of enjoyed this one. It was difficult, so let's talk about the themes. The themes I have down are a strong female character who doesn't lose their fire, a romance in a realistic way, immersive world building, high fantasy, unique writing style, plot twists and lots of action and adventure, an open end setting up for a sequel. So I hate open-ended books because they just leave my mind reeling, and I just anticipate the sequel so much, and I know that's the whole entire point, but I get so frustrated at them. Like I say, I really enjoyed the high action, how the story was kind of developed and driven between these different characters, and the different landscapes you went through with our main character was really interesting. The ending was kind of reeling, and it was, what's going on? I can't believe this has happened. But I don't feel like it impacted me as much as I've seen it impact other readers, and I don't know why. I just found myself feeling a bit like, oh. And the romance I loved, I thought it was great. It was like, it had all of those great elements, but I just felt like it didn't hit as impactful for me as I wanted it to, and which is quite sad. But you know, it is what it is, and yeah, I still recommend it if those themes sound interesting to you. I know a lot of other readers have loved it and adored it, and yeah, I will probably still be picking up the sequel, because perhaps I just need to get more into the story, and I was just a bit too aggravated by the open ending. I really don't know, but yeah, these are my thoughts and my feelings and the themes that I'd use to describe this book. Moving on to my good section. First of all, we have I Want to Die But I Still Want to Eat Tteokbokki. This is the second book to the I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki, and this is basically conversations with our author and their therapist around different themes of life. So the themes I've got written down here of conversation with a therapist, specifically around self-harm, depression, and lots of relatable feelings of being lost, other people's perspective, and being in a rut with life. Switching format between a conversation, then a key header and discussion around a certain point in which which are kind of like little mini essays. I will definitely say make sure you check trigger warnings for this, because there are obviously a lot of trigger warnings, because it is what our author is going through and dealing with, and yeah, it's very raw and vulnerable and real, so I definitely highly recommend tracking trigger warnings. But I just found it didn't really hit in the way that the first book did for me. I really don't know if it's just I was kind of going through a bad place while I was reading this book and it may be wrong a bit too true, or whether it was just I enjoyed another book which I read more recently by the same author under a pseudonym, in which I'll probably say about in my January wrap up, in which is I'm Not Lazy, I'm on Energy Saving Mood. I don't want to go into this book too much because I didn't read it in December, but I enjoyed that book so much more and feel as though it was more of a collective lessons learnt by these two installments of I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki. So yeah, I don't know if that's kind of overshadowing it, because when I did read this book I absolutely loved it, but then reading I'm Not Lazy, I'm on Energy Saving Mood kind of overshadowed that, because it's just lessons drawn from those two books and put into one with more illustrative styles, etc. So I think that's my reasoning as to why I didn't love this book, but I still highly recommend it 100%. I would probably read I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki, and then the second installment, and then I'm Not Lazy, I'm on Energy Saving Mood, if you're interested in any of these books at all. Then we have another Christmassy book, because of course it was December, which is The Christmas Tree Farm. This was the third installment, I want to say, in the Pumpkin Spice Cafe series. I cannot think of the series name, but I read that book. I missed out the Cinnamon Bun bookstore. I don't think you have to read them in order, but obviously they're a spoiler for the romance in this book, so I did feel a bit lost at points, and I didn't realise I had missed a book until I kind of got to the end or a specific scene in The Christmas Tree Farm and realised that I had kind of spoiled myself for the previous book and that romance. But anyhow, the themes that I use to describe this book are already existing world and characters, obviously stubborn film main character with a need to work through trauma, cinnamon roll male main character with a need to work through trauma, love interest and finding solace through one another and helping each other work through their traumas in their own ways, and Christmas scenery in a setting but not overtly so. So there were like little Christmas snippets, like them opening presents and obviously being set on a Christmas tree farm and them having like light switch ons, etc. But it didn't feel like Christmas was just being shoved down your throat, which was really nice. But yeah, there was a lot of trauma needed to be worked on this book. I don't think there was a third up breakup. I can't 100% remember, but I still thought it was a really fun time. The characters did annoy me a little bit, especially the female, because she was getting quite annoying with how she was going on and on about like needing to prove herself and needing to not accept help, and because of her previous history and her past, and I completely get that, but it did as a reader become quite frustrating. But that aside, I'd highly recommend this book if these themes sound interesting to you and perhaps one to pick up for Christmas. Then we have Letters from the Stationery Shop. I'm not going to pronounce the location because I have searched and I cannot find a pronunciation guide, and I really don't want to do it injustice. So Letters from the Stationery Shop, I love this book. So the themes in which are on this one is one consistent of a stationery shop, but stories of multiple different people, many characters, their situation, and how the stationery shop and the owner helps them. You don't see the characters outside their chapters, however, and then there's life lessons, notes on grief, different experiences and outcomes in life situations. This book is very similar to another book that I'm going to discuss later on a little bit, in which is themes I've been loving at the moment, which is basically there's just this one constant thing in which is tying all of this world and this location together, and then you see these characters and these different people flit in and out, and you learn about their stories and you learn a bit about their past and what they're dealing with and how they overcome that and the life trials and tribulations that they're going through. And it just shows how multifaceted humans are, how different we all are, how when you really pry someone open you can see how much they're suffering or how much they're dealing with, and you just don't know on the outside. And yeah, I just thought this was a really wholesome read. Loved that it was set in a stationery shop, loved that the owner gets their own sort of character arc and progression as well, and which was really fun to read, and you kind of get snippets into them. But yeah, the main thing about this one is it didn't really have characters outside their chapters. Other books I've read with this kind of like similar constant theme, you've seen characters kind of dotted in there, like in the background as sub characters, but with this one it's kind of like their chapter, this is their story, these are the life lessons, then it moves on. So yeah, very interesting in the way that it was formatted and it was told, and yeah, I recommend it. And we have The Rainfall Market, which was a cute little short impactful read in which had themes of slice of life lessons, learning snippets, magical alternative worlds, exploration and adventure, getting through hardships of life, and it reads young and a younger protagonist. I'd say that's the only one kind of criticism I would say of this book, is that it did read quite young, and I found that it was harder to kind of relate with because it was such a younger protagonist. But for reflecting on it, once I finished reading it, I realized how wholesome this was and how light-hearted it was supposed to be, and just the kind of life lessons in general that it spoke to you about and it told you about, in which I found really interesting and fun. Then we have The Graveyard Shift, in which was again a short little impactful novella, in which was by M.L. Rio, in which is the same author of If We Were Villains, in which was one of my favourite reads of all time. Now this had themes of obviously being a novella, it was multiple POV with a range of character studies and limit yet vast storytelling for each perspective, told over a short period of time of a single night, friendship and kinship, left feeling a bit what's the point of this, but beautifully crafted. So there were different POVs woven into this book and one sort of story being told, and it was kind of just this one night setting, lots of different things going on in this one night, and then you saw these kind of characters that weren't really friends but kind of friends coming together and them telling their perspectives of what's happening. So yeah, it was quite fun to read. It was very short, sharp and very memorable, but like I say, it was kind of a bit like, what's the point of this, because nothing really happens as such. So yeah, still interesting, still fun, but just was this kind of moment in time that was captured and I really enjoyed reading. Then we have The Smiley Laundromat, in which this is similar to the book that I previously mentioned, in which was the stationery shop, of having this one key theme that links everyone, and in this case it was the laundromat and this one journal and this one guy. So one key link throughout the story is one of the themes. Then there's community, snippets into different people's lives and their stories, depression, money struggles and relationship issues. Unlike the stationery shop, this is where the laundromat book had the characters in the background of other people's stories, so they kind of all interlinked and you saw the characters outside of their chapters, which I think I much enjoyed because it didn't feel so harsh and so structured and so forceful. It just kind of blended in, and then it got to the end where you saw kind of all the characters together. I don't want to spoil what kind of happens, but yeah, you saw all of the characters come together, in which I really enjoyed, and it felt a lot more impactful and wholesome, and the life lessons and themes were just more centered, I found. So yeah, I highly recommend that one. Then we have She's Always Hungry, in which I didn't realize was a short story collection. It also had complex characters and obscure settings, hunger in all forms, blurring the lines of reality, magical realism and quite grotesque. I don't want to give any more themes away from that one because it was, like I say, short stories, and they are very different in how they were kind of structured and the different worlds they were in and the characters that were there, but there were more than others that kind of stuck in my mind. And what I enjoyed at the ending was there was this kind of list of what sort of happened in the short story collection, because I don't know if it's just me, but sometimes when I'm reading short stories I don't 100% get them all, and so it's quite nice in the back of the book to just have this overarching analysis as to what the short story kind of was telling you, just to see from the author's perspective what they were wanting to convey. So I really appreciated that aspect. But yeah, I went into this quite blind, and I kind of recommend you do the same, so I don't want to say too many more themes. Then the final book of my goods here is Every Exquisite Thing, in which had mystery, drama school and academia, beauty, sacrifice and standards, friendships, family, and it was sapphic. So again, I don't want to say too much because it was a mystery element. It was just kind of your stereotypical drama school set in a dark academia setting with something going on ominously and these two people having to come together and work it out. And yeah, I really enjoyed it and thought it was a lot of fun. So next up, I wanted to talk about all of the books that hit my great tier, which is the best of the best books. So starting off with Heavenly Bodies, in which I picked up a bit of a whim at the bookshop, my local bookshop, and I loved this book so much. It just felt so nostalgic nostalgic fantasy for me, and when I say that I mean it's just those fantasies that I originally read that really got me into fantasy that I love. It's just those standard themes with romance in there, a bit of a new concept, some action and adventure, just a mix of everything. So this had themes of prophecies, gods, wars, alliances and kingdoms. It had enemies to lovers and fated mate themes, cliffhanger ending, losing everything you love and gaining everything you need, a good mix of balance of war and political kingdom scenes, romance and general character development. I find that balance is always hard to strike, and I do love a good political fantasy book, but I also love a good romantasy book as well, and I find sometimes it's either one or the other, whereas with this book it felt so good because of the balance between that political fantasy kind of high stakes going on and then the romance brewing. What I loved is that the fated mates, without giving too many spoilers or any spoilers, fated mates weren't between our main characters, and if you read the back of the book or you read the book, you'll know it's kind of this fated mates to someone else, and it's whether that this other person, they can fall in love, and whether fated mates are a real thing. So yeah, I don't want to give too many other things away because I feel like this book is just, it needs to be enjoyed, just going in, reading it and having a great time. So I highly recommend picking this one up if those themes sound interesting to you. Then we have Tiny Moons, A Year of Eating in Shanghai. This is a collection of essays on reclaiming culture and heritage through memories of food and deep descriptions on food. I love this book. It's so small, impactful, and so much fun to read, and it made me so hungry throughout it. But it's nostalgic feeling and it's heartfelt feeling of reclaiming those memories and that culture, and just getting those nostalgia feelings back from food and feeling yourself again was just so beautiful to witness and read and dive into. And yeah, if you're just looking for a bit of a palate cleanser or just something to escape into that's really short, sharp and fun, then I recommend. We have a graphic novel type book, or more of a picture book, in which is really quickly just to read and digest, but definitely one in which it can be revisited again and again, which is The Grand Hotels of Feeling. So this had themes of being light-hearted but meaningful lessons on feelings, stunning graphics and wondrous storytelling, and suitable for a younger audience too. It was just so lovely and wholesome, just giving you different ways of how feelings come about, and all these feelings checking into this hotel, and how your body is kind of a vessel for emotions and how you deal with them, and how if you dampen certain emotions, how they respond. And yeah, I just thought it was so cute and so fun and suitable for a younger audience, just kind of crafting that different ways of how to deal with emotions and how emotions respond to different things. And yeah, I just thought it was lovely and I highly recommend. Then we have Mammoth, in which had themes of being a quick, easy read. It was unique storytelling and focal points, short time frame, limited characters and so many emotions, and a need to drive and escape, grotesque and gruesome animal abuse at points, disgusting and visceral descriptions. This book, I cannot really describe how disgusting and how gross it made me feel, but yet how wonderful and powerful that is that a book managed to get that feeling from me. The only part that I just had to look away was the animal abuse descriptions and the kind of discussion on animals, but this book just felt so raw and so visceral and so gross and just so wondrous at the same time, and not in the response to the themes, but just in the storytelling and the character development and the writing of this book is just absolutely superb, and I highly recommend it. And I definitely want to read Boulder by the same author, because I feel like that might be like the first book in this series, but I don't think you have to read the same books like in the order, I think, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm definitely going to read Boulder eventually, but yeah, I highly recommend Mammoth, but please be warned of those grotesque, disgusting descriptors that are woven in this book. And we have my second to last read of December, in which was Rewitched, in which I again adored so much, and I have been anticipating reading it for so long. I really wanted to read it around Halloween with it being a witchy theme, but of course I just love witchy books, so it doesn't just have to be around Halloween. So this had themes of romance, family relationships, heritage and found family, friendships and importance of people, magic, witches and covens, light-hearted, really easyable, digestible writing with easy to understand characters. I binged this book so badly. I literally had it like one afternoon or one day. I remember it was raining outside and I just put a fireplace on the television and just sat and read this book and fell in love with it. I thought it was superb. I just loved how the development of the plot was, how there was kind of a little bit of action, a little bit of relatability in terms of its setting and its timeline. And yeah, I just thought it was so good. And again, it just a perfect quintessential fantasy for me that I highly recommend and really, really loved and wish I read a bit soon. Then the final book I have to speak to you about, in which was the last book I read of the year and also my last great book that I want to discuss today, is Twilight, which I know this is a reread for me and a heavy reread. I have reread Twilight so many times because if you didn't know, this was the book that kind of originally got me into reading or back to reading again. I've been a reader my whole entire life, but this was the book that started this obsession with just wanting to read and consume everything. And yeah, I love Twilight so very much, and so I kind of wanted to end the year on going back to my roots and just experiencing it again. Of course, it was just full of cringe and I knew the story inside out and I knew everything that was going to happen, but it was just so fun to revisit this. And I am not a huge rereader, but I only really ever reread Twilight, and my partner got me the most beautiful editions for Christmas. It's the new white editions, which is stunning. So I just had to reread them and dive into them, and yeah, make use of loving the story and just knowing I could go back to my roots. And I thought it was a perfect way to end the year because it felt so full-rounded and wholesome, and it brings such nostalgia to me. And yeah, I just love Twilight. I'm sure you know all of the themes, but it's like obviously vampires and werewolves and just so many themes that I'm sure you're very much aware of it. But yeah, loved it, read it, and will continue to reread, probably going forward multiple times throughout my life. So those are all of the books I read in the month of December. Thank you ever so much for joining. I would love to know your favorite reads of the month of December or any book recommendations you may ever have. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I hope that wherever you are and whatever you're doing, you have a wonderful day or night. Until next time, friends. Bye!